Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
I am Professor Knowledge. Welcome to my classroom. Facts provided by historyfacts.com. Subscribe to their newsletter to receive daily history facts in your email. Here is today's useless history. The earliest passports used written descriptions instead of photos. Imagine trying to pass through border security when all you have to prove your identity is a piece of paper that says brown hair and freckles. While that wouldn't fly today, it's typically how things worked before passports had photographs. Early passports simply included details such as the holder's name and the location they were traveling. Photography wasn't invented until the 1820s, and it took many more years for the technology to allow for easy passport photographs. Then around 1825 U.S., passports began to include written descriptions of the subject's facial features, such as their eyes, forehead, and nose, to help aid in identification, and other countries followed suit. Though you'd occasionally find someone who described their nose as Roman, many passport applicants listed their features as average, thus rendering those descriptions rather unhelpful. What's more, these physical descriptions were occasionally altered by officials to be less flattering than in the eyes of the applicant. One man who described his face shape as intelligent on his application was dismayed to find that it was later changed to oval. By a government official. In 1914, the year World War I began, many countries began mandating more secure passports with both photos and descriptions, as governments feared potential espionage. In 1920, the League of Nations established a set of global passport standards requiring the use of photographic identification. These increased security measures led to a whole set of new issues, as many people viewed passport photos as demeaning and comparable to mugshots. Some border officials were also unprepared for changes in a person's physical appearance. In one instance in 1923, a clean-shaven Danish man was required to regrow the mustache from his passport photo before he was allowed to leave Germany. The world's rarest passport is issued by a medieval religious order. The Knights of Malta are a religious order founded around the year 1099 in Jerusalem, originally established to care for sick pilgrims. The group was formally recognized by Pope Paschal II in 1113, which established the legal basis for sovereignty that the group maintains today. The order later fought battles in the Crusades of the 12th and 13th centuries and was ousted by Napoleon Bonaparte from the Maltese archipelago in 1798. Finally, in 1834, the order established its headquarters in Rome, where it remains today. Despite owning no land, the order issues passports like a sovereign nation, including what's considered the rarest passport in the world. This diplomatic document is held by roughly 500 key organizational figures who are tasked with performing duties abroad, including the Grand Master, the order's leader. Each passport features a dark crimson cover and allows for travel throughout 113 independent states. Thank you for joining me in my classroom today. As always, you can find more useless history at roguemedianetwork.com or anywhere you get your podcasts.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.
Walking was a competitive sport in the 19th century. At 1 a.m., on March 10, 1879, the arena at Gilmore's Garden in New York City, later renamed Madison Square Garden, was absolutely packed with screaming fans of America's latest sports craze, pedestrianism. That's right, competitive walking. At the venue, fans outside tried to shove themselves in, breaking windows and scaling the roof. It was no less chaotic inside, where ticket holders scrambled on top of tables, chairs, and each other's shoulders to get a better view. That day marked the start of the Astley Belt, essentially the Super Bowl of walking. Contestants had to circle the 8-mile track for 6 days straight and reach a distance of at least 450 miles, and whoever traveled farthest was declared the winner. Athletes were not permitted to leave the track, and instead had tents or cottages where they were allowed to get a little rest or medical attention. Americans' fascination with pedestrianism can be traced back to one man, a New York Herald employee named Edward Payson Weston, who had a penchant for long-distance walking. Recognizing his gift for endurance, he made a bet with a friend on the 1860 presidential race, in which the loser had to walk all the way from Boston to Washington, D.C. for the inauguration. Because Weston bet against Abraham Lincoln, he found himself on a 10-day trek through ice and snow that made him a media darling. He started organizing endurance walks against other people, which grew into pedestrianism. The sport reached the peak of its popularity in the 1870s and 1880s, at which time it was far more than a novelty. Pedestrianism spawned America's first celebrity athletes, complete with trading cards and brand endorsement deals. Weston was the first. He was so famous that scientists published studies on his urine. Many later superstars were immigrants and people of color. One of the last great pedestrian celebrities was Frank Hart, a Haitian immigrant with a record-breaking career that included a 565-mile, 6-day walk. Plenty of women participated in the sport, too, as the March 1879 Astley Cup marched on in Midtown Manhattan. 5 women were competing in their own 6-day walk up in Harlem. There have been 4 Madison Square Gardens. The arena that hosted pedestrian tournaments is not the Madison Square Garden we know today. In fact, there have been 4 different buildings in New York City to hold that name. The first was a railroad station converted into an entertainment venue by showman P.T. Barnum. It was later purchased by composer Patrick Gilmore and named Gilmore's Garden before being bought by William Vanderbilt in 1879 and renamed Madison Square Garden. Eventually, the original structure was torn down and a much larger venue was built in its place, with multiple stages, executive meeting rooms, and a giant amphitheater. But it struggled to stay profitable and eventually was demolished. The third Madison Square Garden was built in 1925, a couple of miles uptown on 8th Avenue. Then, when New York's original Penn Station was torn down in 1963, Madison Square Garden's ownership group seized the opportunity to build a new venue in its place. The current Madison Square Garden and the previous MSG was demolished.